I'm not giving out copies for this because it's mamish the last page. Okay, so you guys will listen to this little piece on the last page, and tomorrow you'll all get new copies of what we're going to do for a few days before I go away. So say that. Okay, we mentioned in Ois tests what is unique about the whole story of David HaMelech writes Poda besholom nafshi mikravli ki barabim hayu imadi, that I was redeemed in peace from a battle. Why? Ki barabim hayu imadi. And who are those rabbim? Who remembers? Who were the rabbim who were with David HaMelech? What was the chiddush of all this? The novelty of the fact that there were some people with David HaMelech that you wouldn't think should be.
They were the enemies.
Enemies, right? Who were they fighting with? Knew a little Nach. You're allowed to remember Nach even though you're a man. Philistines. He wasn't fighting the Philistines. He was fighting his son, Avshalom. His son was trying to overtake his father, the king, and take over the kingdom. And what would Avshalom have done to David HaMelech if he had won the war? Okay, I know. No one wants to say it. You're also religious. Be more religious and remember the story in Tanakh, and then say you wanted to kill him. That's fine. The religious part is remembering Torah, not wanting to say Avshalom wanted to kill David HaMelech. It's all over Tanakh that he wanted to kill him. It's not a secret. Okay. Avshalom wanted to kill his father, wanted to take over his father's kingship and kill him. So the soldiers of Avshalom, despite the fact that they were fighting against David HaMelech's soldiers who wouldn't let David HaMelech go to the front, we talked about this on Thursday, because they didn't want anything to happen to David HaMelech. But the soldiers of Avshalom were davening for the safety of David HaMelech, not for his victory in the war, but for his personal safety, which itself is rather astounding. Right, and that's the kibburabi hayu imadi, right? And so the Rebbe explains that even tefillah, which generally, what do we say about tefillah? Shas tzleisa shas krova. The time of davening is a time of battle. Why is davening a time of battle? Because there are no props. What are you trying to do? You're trying to get your nefesh bahamis, your animal soul, to directly express its love for Kadosh Baruch Hu. What's the problem? Why is that a battle? It might not. Might not love him. Might be more interested in other things like, breakfast if it's shachris, lunch if it's mincha. I don't know how dinner works around here. Before Marav, after Marav, I don't know how it works. Right? Theoretically, Marav should be before dinner. That's the way it should, but in the summer, that's difficult. Right? Okay. So it might be I'm thinking about things that aren't necessarily so godly. And even if I'm thinking about godly things, I'm thinking about it, but it's not that my whole emotional reality is wrapped up in that godliness. Putting on tefillin is relatively easy because I have a physical act that I do, and so my nefesh bahamis agrees to put on tefillin. We've mentioned this many times. It's important to say every single conscious act you do is being done by your nefesh bahamis. Right? Because conscious you is your nefesh bahamis. What if the impetus for that act comes from the nefesh elokis, from the godly soul, which it often does, right? So then the nefesh bahamis has to, what the lashon of the Alter Rebbe is, the nefesh bahamis has to agree. Has to agree to do it. So now it can agree to do it in different ways. It can agree to do it grudgingly. It can agree to do it because there's no choice. It can agree to do it because it's so excited about doing it. Because the nefesh bahamis can be very excited about elokus. Because conscious you can be very excited about Elokus. Most people like Shabbos. Right? Most people look forward to Shabbos. Who's looking forward to Shabbos? My nefesh bahamis is looking forward to Shabbos. My nefesh bahamis loves Shabbos. Does my nefesh bahamis love fasting on Yom Kippur? Probably not. Right? Does he like Yom Kippur? He might love Yom Kippur. He doesn't like the fasting part, but the rest of the day, just, wow, it's an amazing day. I don't know. It depends on the nefesh bahamis. Everyone's different. Right? Okay. So davening is particularly difficult because I have to get my nefesh bahamis. There's no props. I have to get my nefesh bahamis to say the words that are written in the siddur, and I find that very difficult to do because my nefesh bahamis might not be interested. It says it because it knows it has to, and okay, beseder, it's it's part of what we do. But to do it in a serious way is a very, very difficult thing, and it's mamish a battle. And so that's why Chazal say it's not new. Chazal talk about it. Shas tzleisa, shas krov. So then what's strange about the pasuk? What was the peace? Now, peace, of course, we said was arrived at. How did the rectification of the world, the elevation of the world, the fixing of the world, how did it happen in a peaceful, calm way? Through learning Torah. Because when you learn Torah about a particular reality in the world, so you elevate that reality, even though you don't have to confront that reality. When you're davening, you have to confront your nefesh habahamis directly. So your nefesh habahamis is davening. When you're learning Torah, so it's true, your nefesh habahamis is learning Torah, but your nefesh habahamis likes learning things. Right? Nefesh habahamis enjoys intellectual activity. It has intellect. It enjoys it. Right? And if you happen to be learning about a sugya in Baba Kama or a sugya in Sukkah or a Mishnah in Brachos or whatever you're learning, so that Mishnah happens to be, or that Gemara happens to be talking about a particular state of reality in the physical world, and you're elevating that and illuminating that by virtue of sitting in the calm of your base medrash or your living room and learning it. You don't have to confront it. And that's the bitur bebechina sholem in an oifen of peace and calm that happens through Torah. And so the beginning of the mimer, we can do a review of the mimer since we're finishing the mimer. The beginning of the mimer, we said there was a definite difference between those two. The chiddush in Ois Ches, the Rebbe told us that really even the war, right? What was Chazal's statement? Milchama aschalta de geulahi. The war is the beginning of peace. The war is the beginning of redemption. Right now, in real politics, that sometimes means you have to fight a war in order to have a state of peace, or peace through strength, or whatever you call it. Okay. In ruchnius, in spirituality, what does that mean? That means that how the Rebbe explained it, every single action that we do, the true source of it is the essence of our soul. And what's unique about the essence of our soul? There is no opposition from the nefesh habahamis in that place of reality. So every single action we do, the true source of it is a place where there's no opposition. It's a place of complete calm and peace. The five, are they still up there? Is that them over there? I don't think that they're still there. What does that mean? They didn't learn anything in this room the rest of the day on Thursday? Is that what happened? Didn't learn a thing? Oh my gosh, we'll have to talk to them. Maybe they went on a tiyah. Right? So those 5 levels of soul. So the first levels of soul have an opposing force in the nefesh habahamis. Right? Action of the nefesh habahamis, emotion of the nefesh habahamis, intellect of the nefesh habahamis, even ratzon, will of the nefesh habahamis. The chiddush of the nefesh, the 5th level, the essence of the soul, no opposition. No state of yechidush of the nefesh habahamis. And if you see it in a mimer, so ask Tzvi, he'll explain it. And every single act we do, ultimately, is coming from that place. So every single act we do, ultimately, is a state of tremendous mesiras nefesh, tremendous self-sacrifice. The simplest act we do to connect to the Eibishter, it's coming from the deepest place in us. And so in Ois Ches, the Rebbe told us that even the war is ultimately rooted in peace. And in Ois Tes, the Rebbe told us something even more astounding, that on a certain level, the tefillah is an even greater level of bitur besholom than mesiras nefesh, than Torah. Because Torah, what do you have to do when you're learning Torah? So you have to use your own intellect. And there's a lot of you involved. Right? You're going to be successful in Torah if you use your intellect to learn Torah. And what's one of the dangers of learning Torah that the Rebbe Shav talks about at great length in a kuntras called Kuntras Eitz Chaim, explaining why we have to learn Chassidus before and after we learn Gemara and things like that? Because we might get very impressed with our own intellectual stature by virtue of learning Torah because it's so intellectual. Right? And when we think about the bittul of Talmud Torah, and we think about the fact that we're learning the Torah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we don't forget the nois in the Torah, the one who gives the Torah, not gave, gives, as we say in the bracha, when do we do that generally? Before we're learning. And if we're learning for a long period of time, we'll stop and remind ourselves, but then go back to the learning, because the learning itself is an expression of our own intellect. It has to be. Right? And we told the story about the tzanza, right? What was one of the things that tzanza Rebbe said you should do? Who should you forget about when you're learning Torah? Don't remember anything. Okay, beside it. Mashen kain betfila. That's not the case in tefillah. Tzarech liyos ka'avda kamimar. Last line in Oistes. You have to be like this the servant in front of the master. Tachlis a bittul. The ultimate state of self-nullification. Bittul the Mesiris Nefesh, the ultimate Mesiris Nefesh. Okay, so we've turned the tables completely. And that's also going to help us understand what was our basic problem in this whole mimer. Why Poda besholom is a pasuk said by the Mitla Rebbe when he got out of jail and the Alter Rebbe when he got out of jail. What's jail got to do with sholem? They were in a state of tremendous battle. So now we understand, just like David HaMelech was in a state of tremendous battle and yet said Poda besholom, because the true victory is coming from the Mesiris Nefesh, from the self-sacrifice. The self-sacrifice is coming from the essence of the soul, which is a place where there's no opposition, where there's calm, where there's peace. And if that aspect of you and I can be accessed, so then our life is calm and peaceful. Al pi kol hanal, based on everything we just said, the whole mimer, ois yud. Yuvan zeh, it's understood, shadafka al yedei aveda ata, specifically through our aveda now. Now, the Rebbe said this in Tafshin Mem Aleph, so the Rebbe said this 45 years ago. But times have changed, but times haven't changed. Yuvan zeh, shadafka al yedei aveda ata. Right there. Anti-Semitism, there's no question that the events of 2 years ago, a lot of rocks were lifted up and the worms called anti-Semites crawled out from under those rocks and made themselves visible. Okay, true. But it's not like it's a new phenomena, anti-Semitism. It's just always on a simmer, right? I don't know what Mr. Fitch's experience was as a child, but there was a school 5 blocks from my home, called Vancouver College, which was the Irish, they were called the Fighting Irish, right? And then there was Notre Dame, and they were right? They were the Irish Catholic school. And a Jew couldn't walk past that school. You'd get beaten up, right? Couldn't walk past that school. I could. It's my best friend who lived across the street, Christopher Kenny. Christopher. Nice Jewish name, right? Who was called Kippy, Baruch Hashem. I didn't have to call him Chris. Kippy, right? Kippy Kenny. So he went to that school, and he was my best friend. We lived on the same block. We played together all the time, even though his parents, who had children the same age as our children, and so we all played together for years and years and years and years. His parents never referred to us by name. They referred to us as the Jews on the block. The kids all had no problems. The parents were old-timers. But Kippy made sure that I could walk by the school because he would beat up anybody who gave me any trouble because Kippy was a tough guy. He was a good friend to have. He was just a good kid. He really was a nice guy. He was a habitual smoker from the age of 8. I don't know how that happens, but he was smoking cigarettes from 8, and he just kept smoking cigarettes. I hope he stopped, or else he's dead. But, I hope he's still alive. Protecting Jews from mad Catholics. But, it's not new. So this mimer was said 45 years ago, right? When the world was still a crazy place. A little less crazy in certain regards, but still not a place of great illumination. Shedafka yedei aveda ata, specifically through the aveda now, bazman de ikvis de Mashiach, in the times on the heels of Mashiach, kasher achoshech yechasa aretz, when darkness covers the land. A pasuk in Yeshayahu that describes the days before Mashiach. Someone sent me something very sweet. Donald Trump just did away with the penny. Right? There's no more pennies in America. The Canada did that a while ago, didn't they?
A while ago.
Yeah. Okay. So there's no more pennies, which makes sense because it's 4 cents to make a penny. It costs 4 cents to make a penny. So they got rid of the penny. So there's a statement in Chazal that Ben David will come, Mashiach will come, tichla pruta mina kis, when the pruta, which is the smallest coin, will disappear from the wallet. So someone sent me something. The penny's disappearing. Now, really, what the pshat in Chazal it means is that people are going to be so poor they won't even have even a penny in it. But Baruch Hashem, we shouldn't see that. But the smallest coin should disappear. So the smallest coin is disappearing, at least in the in that currency. So that darkness will cover the land. Dafka in this generation, when there's great darkness, we're going to come to the revelation of the future redemption. Ki dafka bezman zeh, because specifically in this time, when we have to involve ourselves in nitzutze kedusha, with sparks of holiness, shenaflu, that fell, l'makom bilti tahor, to a place that's impure, meaning we're going to have to deal with all sorts of states of reality that we might not have had to have dealt with in the past. V'tzarech lahafech, and we have to transform meriru, bitterness, lamiska, to sweetness, v'chashucha, and darkness, lenahara, to light, va'ad, to such an extent, shemizman lezman, from time to time, yotzim min adalit amesh shel Torah, time to time. From time to time, we might have to go out from the Dalit Amis, meaning the Dalit Amis, it defines a space, right? From the space, the limited space, specific space of Torah, an Amma is 1.5 feet. Right? Dalit Amis is the amount of space you're not allowed to move. If you're on Shabbos, you can't carry something Dalit Amis in the public domain. Right? Each person acquires to himself, so to speak, his own Dalit Amis. When if you're standing in the street on Shabbos, if you acquired that Dalit Amis, so you could carry something around in that Dalit Amis. That's not very much. It's 6 meters. Say 3 meters. Right? So I'm sorry, 2 meters by 2 meters. Right? So 6 feet. So it's not a very big space. It also makes handing things from one person to another in the public domain, if there's no eruv, a problem, because you have your own space and my space, and you're transferring it from your space to my space, even if we're standing right next to each other, which is a big problem. People think, I can stand next to him, hand him the keys or something, and he'll put on the belt. No, you have to do that in a private domain, not in a public domain. But that's a separate issue. So that's Dalit Amis. So the Rebbe says, and sometimes, halavai, only sometimes, you have to go out from the space of Torah, or mina Dalit Amis shel tefillah, or from the space of prayer. Lot says mi beis knesset mi beis medrash, to go out from the shul or from the study hall, ubeloshen Shulchan Aruch, and in the language of Shulchan Aruch, what might a person have to do? Hanhig behem minag derech eretz. He might have to be involved in derech eretz, which means he might be involved in making a living and involving himself in worldly matters. That's probably part of life for most people. Mikol mokem. Nevertheless, al yedei aveda achshav, through the aveda now, dafka, specifically, in what might look like a difficult time, a dark time, a time of overriding physicality, mevim es geula sida, specifically now we bring the geula. The az yakuyim mashikosav is now, it will be fulfilled, that which is written, vatem tilukotu, that you will be gathered la'echad echad, one by one, Kol echad ve'echad misrael, every single Jew, v'chol Yisrael, and all of the Jewish people together, v'kaspam v'zahavam itam, and their silver and their gold with them, im kol and itzutzetz kedusha, with all of the sparks of holiness, hashayachim lahem, that are relevant to these pieces of physical reality that every single person has, right? And you have yours, I have mine, we all have our own. There's all sorts of different parts. It's called chelkei ba'elam. Each and every one of us has our own portion in elam hazeh, in our world, in this world, and we're responsible for elevating that portion of reality. I can't elevate yours, it's yours. And you can't elevate mine, it's mine, right? So the events that happen to you, who can elevate those events? Only you, right? If you meet someone in the street, you could make that event a godly, holy event. Or it could just be a happenstance experience that has no relevance to anything important whatsoever. How do you make it a positive event? Well, if that person walks away feeling better because they ran into you, so then you've done something positive. Right? Every single person you see on the street or you see in life, b'chlal, feels better because they just had a short encounter with you, then you're living a pretty holy life. Right? That's pretty amazing. Right? The last conversation I ever had with my father, I had one more. It wasn't a conversation. He was 101 years old. He was bedridden. His memory wasn't the greatest. Right? I probably told you the story, but I'll tell it again because I asked something about what we learned on Thursday and no one remembered. So it's okay. When I walked in, he didn't recognize me. He did, but it took a minute or two. When my wife walked in, so he recognized her right away. I didn't take it personally. Right? I just explained the fact that he knew it was me, so it must be her. But she had a big advantage over me in terms of his adoration for her. He loved her. He's crazy about her. Why? She was a doctor. He was a doctor. He loved medicine and wanted his kids to be doctors, and none of his kids are doctors. Nebuch, there's a couple of rabbis, but I mean, there's no doctors out there. Right? He's happy with the rabbis, right? Especially now he's in Gan Eden. He's very happy with the rabbis. But in Ayamaz, he was also happy with the rabbis. But he wanted someone to be a doctor just because he enjoyed it so much. So my wife walked in the room and said, "Oh, hello." Her name is Rivka, but her nickname is Ricky, and he always called her Rick. Hi, Rick. So. Hi, Dad, how you doing? Well, they schmoozed a little, and then he said, "You're a medical student, right?" So she said, "Well, I finished 35 years ago, but yeah, always learning, right? Especially doctors always have to learn." So they talked about medicine a little bit here and there, and so then my father asked my wife if she likes being a doctor. So she said, yes, she enjoys it very, very much. She likes being a doctor. Then she asked him, and she knew the answer. Did you enjoy being a doctor? He said, oh, I loved it. He did. He just loved it. So she said, well, what did you love about it? He said an amazing thing. He said, well, people come in not feeling good, and they leave feeling better. That's nice. What a way to spend your day. That's how he related to being a doctor. That's what his day was about, that the people who came in to see him probably weren't feeling well, and hopefully when they left him, they'd be feeling better. That's an amazing way to spend your day. That's evidently what he liked about it. He was a Canadian doctor. He was not paid big dollars, right? I remember the government was fighting the doctors over, because it was socialized medicine. So the government, the doctor would charge, the government had the money, and they would pay the doctors based on how many patients they saw, blah, 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 blah. So I remember the government under Premier Bennett, how's that for a name from the past, huh? So they were fighting the doctors and decided to publish the salaries of every doctor in the province in the paper to show. And so we all saw what my father made, and we were quite amazed how little it was. It was really not very much money. We lived very well. We had a car, we had a beautiful house, we went on holidays. I don't know how he did it. Right? He also gave a lot of tzedakah, so I can say this also. Gave a lot of tzedakah. So one of his friends, a doctor, after they published it, came up to my father. I wasn't there. My father just told us the story. Came up to him and said, "Can I ask you a question?" He said, "What?" "I saw what you're making. How are you giving so much tzedakah? Are you doing abortions in the basement?" That's what he asked me. Abortions, of course, were illegal. "Are you doing them in the basement?" My father said, "No, I'm not doing abortions in the basement." But he used to give away a lot of money to tzedakah. I don't know where it came from. I saw what he made. Baruch Hashem. But if we can live life that way, that when people see us, they feel better later, so then we've taken that moment in time and elevated it. That's our little chalik in the world. It's no one else's. It's his and mine. The two of us are sharing that little, or five of us, however many people there happen to be in that particular situation. Right? So can I make that situation a situation that is positive and holy? Yes, absolutely. By somehow doing something positive for the people that are part of that situation. They should walk away feeling better. They should have learned something of use by virtue of the conversation. And then that little chalik of the world has been elevated. So all of those sparks of holiness that are relevant to each and every one of us, also those sparks that are found in our money, in our kesef, our gold, our silver, our gold, kipshutam, simply, right? Because we use our money for positive things, give tzedakah, help other people. Lefisha ba'aveda zu bezman hagolus, because in our Aveda, bezman hagolus, and this is based on everything the Rebbe told us in this mimer, in the last, especially the last two oisias. Yeshna inyan mesiras nefesh betachlis. It's the ultimate expression of self-sacrifice. And as we saw earlier in the mimer, when we talked about it, the self-sacrifice is the fact that, bottom line, we don't have to do it. We don't have to do it, but the Eibishter wants. We don't want to. It's a dumb decision to make, but we don't have to do it. Right? We don't have to, in Gashmias, right? In physical terms. Better to eat healthy food or unhealthy food? Better to eat healthy food. You have to. Do whatever you want. You want to eat potato chips and Coca-Cola 3 meals a day? So eat potato chips and Coca-Cola 3 meals. You can do whatever you want. Okay, what about in Ruchnias? Same thing. Is it better for you to serve God and be a person connected to truth? Absolutely. There's no question. There's no comparison. Okay, do you have to? No. You can do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. Shabbos, you want to, God forbid, get in a motorcycle and drive up and down the Tel Aviv road. We hear them every Friday night. Right? Driving up and down the Tel Aviv road because it's clear. So there's the motorcycles flying along at who knows how fast they're going. I don't know. Very fast. You want to do that? Can you do that? Yeah, God lets you do whatever you want, which is bizarre, right? We've talked about it. I mean, if I made the world, I'd make sure everybody knew about it, right? He's completely chilled. Made the world, and he gives someone energy. He'll give someone the energy and the life force to sit at a computer and write a book about the fact that God doesn't exist. And while the guy's writing the book, God's giving him the energy to write the book. I'd off the guy in a second if he started writing that, right? Just Kaplan doesn't. That's the end of him. Right? No problem. Right? Do whatever you want. What does that mean? So the Rebbe said an amazing thing. What does that mean? That means everything that we do for him is mesiras nefesh, is mamish giving our complete soul to him. Because it doesn't have to be done. I mean, it does, of course, obviously in terms of truth, but in terms of the reality that the Eibishter created, you don't want to do it, so don't do it. Bad decision, but it's your decision to make. So absolutely everything is mesiras nefesh b'tachlis. It's amazing. Ki yedua Torahs Rabbeinu Hazaken, as is well known, the Torah of the Alter Rebbe. Rabbeinu Hazaken is the author of Tanya. Ubarucha, and at great length, b'mamar Nasi Doreinu, and at great length in the Hasidic, in the Maimarim of the Nasi Doreinu, the Rebbe is always referring to the previous Rebbe. Krei Kiddush Marichami Admar, my father-in-law, the Rebbe. Ala Pasek, very, very amazing shot in the pasuk. Va'ish Meisha Anav Ma'od. Right, the end of the Torah talks about Meisha Rabbi. It's like not the end. It's in Baloischa, right, in Bamidbar, regarding the story of Aaron and Miriam, who were disagreeing with their brother about something. Va'ish Meisha Anav Ma'od, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu chastises them and says, Meisha is the most humble person, Mikola Adam Mishal Pnei Adam, from any person that's ever been on earth. Most humble person. Now, humble does not mean that he was a wallflower and didn't get anything done. He was extremely forceful and would battle powerfully 3 million Jews. Right? If they weren't doing what he wanted, he made it clear that that was not the way to go. So humility isn't that I don't think I'm any good. Humility is that regardless of how amazing I might be, and we all are, because God creates amazing things, that's all he does. Right? So don't be so impressed by yourself, because whatever you're good at, it's because God gave you that ability. It all comes from him. Right? The two things that the world is most impressed by is really interesting. They're impressed by looks and brains, which are the two things that people have the least amount of control over. Right? You have a big nose, and that's the way it goes. You don't have a big nose, and you look a little better than the people who have a big nose. Okay, so beseder, they'll think you're pretty. You'll be a pretty boy, or she'll be a pretty girl. Okay, good. Why? Because God made them that way. Right? Brains, who gives you brains? Give some people a little more, some people a little less, right? And interesting enough, we're impressed by these things that are completely and totally, not completely and totally beyond our control, because obviously, relative to brains, you can use them or not use them, right? And relative to looks, obviously a person can enhance their looks to a certain degree, but I mean, the old saying was, you can't put lipstick on a dog, right? So there you go, right?
I was thinking that, but with another animal.
I know. I don't want to say that animal. I changed the animal. I get it. I just changed the animal, even though they're both treif. But, somehow dogs got a free pass. The other one doesn't get a free pass. Just because he ends up in the supermarket next door. I don't know why. Dogs are in the Chinese restaurant down the street, but, whatever. At least they were until they got them. So those are two things that we have very little control of, a certain amount, but very little. And then yet everybody gets so excited about them. What should people be excited about? Well, is a person a warm, caring, kind, giving, charitable person or not? Because those are things you're responsible for. Right? You can either be a creep or you can be a nice person. Right? It's up to you. Right? Everybody's a nice person when they're in a good mood. Right? What separates nice people from people who aren't so nice is how nice are you when you're in a bad mood. Nice people are even nice to other people when they're in a bad mood. They don't use the bad mood as an excuse to be nasty. Creepy people do. They just, Genghis Khan was a wonderful guy in a good mood. Oh, take my village. Oh. He just conquered a village and killed everybody. Okay, if he's in a good mood, he'll give it to you. He's a bad mood, he'll come and cut off your head the next day. It's not a nice guy, right? Nice people are nice all the time. Even if they don't feel so well, they have a headache, it's been a bad day, their boss yelled at them, their wife yelled at them, whatever it happens to be, right? So Moshe was an Anuf, was extremely humble. And what was the humility? The appreciation of the fact that all of his keiches, his intelligence, his holiness, everything about Moshe, which is so astounding, and he was the most astounding person ever. And yet he was also the most humble person ever because he never ascribed it to himself. He always realized that this is simply a gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him. And it's to be used for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's purposes. The most humble person ever. But who humbled him more than anybody? By whom was he truly humbled? Meaning he didn't think he was better than anybody else. He wasn't. I mean, he was. But he wasn't. Why not? The Eibusher gave him everything that made him better than everybody else. So the Eibusher gave you and I what he gives you and I, and the Eibusher gave Moshe Rabbeinu whatever he gave Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu happened to use it better, to his credit. So you and I are very impressed by him, but he wasn't impressed by himself. There's those people you don't have to be impressed by because they're so impressed by themselves. Their mates see everybody and being impressed by them. Mitzi means like they fulfill the obligation of people being impressed by them by being so impressed by themselves. So you don't have to. They think they're so great. So you don't have to think they're so great because they fulfilled the obligation already of someone thinking that. There are people like that. Va'ish Moshe anav ma'ed mikol adam asher al pnei adam. Sha'anaved Moshe is humility of Moshe. Moshe emes v'teirasei emes. Moshe's truth and his Torah is truth. And the Torah is called Moshe's Torah, which is really astounding because it's a HaKadosh Baruch Hu's, but Moshe is the one who gave it to us. And he gave it to us without any Moshe in it. He was a clear conduit that just gave us exactly what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him without inserting any Moshe in it, and that's why we can trust Moshe Rabbeinu's Torah. What was his humility? To what generation humbled Moshe more than any other generation? The Alter Rebbe says, and the Frierdiker Rebbe says, B'kesher l'daradit was the Mashiach, our generation. He sees our generation, he's completely humbled. And what? The Rebbe says something astounding, and this is something the Rebbe says very often relative to our generation. When he sees the Mesiris Nefesh of this generation, Torah, in their fulfillment of Torah, and what's the greatest expression of our Mesiris Nefesh? Be'inyan al yizbayesh mipnei maligin. Do not be embarrassed by the scorners. The Rebbe mentions this a number of times in Sichas and Maimarim relative to the Mesiris Nefesh of our generation. The Mesiris Nefesh of the generation before was keeping Torah in the face of Soviet oppression. We're not oppressed. Baruch Hashem. No one's telling us we can't put on tefillin, can't learn Torah. Baruch Hashem. We're a completely different state of reality than the generations before us. Right? We don't have Cossacks organizing pogroms. We have Arabs organizing pogroms, but we also happen to have protection. They have an army, right? And in Chutz La'aretz, they might not like us, the government, but in all fairness, in most cases, push comes to shove, they are willing to protect us if they know that someone's trying to hurt us, right? And so when you walk in, now it's not an uplifting feeling, but it does happen to be something rather unusual and new to our generation, that when you walk into a shul in Europe, there's always 2 or 3 soldiers standing out front of the shul. I mean, who's protecting the Jews? The people who used to kill them are protecting them, right? That's a pretty serious change, right? In Europe, the soldiers were not protecting the Jews 100 years ago. Now they are. There's still people who want to hurt the Jews, so they have to be protected. Okay, we're still in Golus 100%, but the fact that it's a completely different situation than it was not long ago. That the army is protecting, the army of the place is protecting the Jews. Remember, after 9/11, so of course there was no planes for a while, for obvious reason. Well, it took a while. So now, when did 9/11 happen? Well, it happened on the 11th of September. So that's usually pretty close to Rosh Hashanah, and it was indeed the week before Rosh Hashanah. So all the Bachrim from here who wanted to go to the Rebbe for Rosh Hashanah couldn't go. All their flights were canceled. At a certain point, I remember it was a Mitzi Shabbos. The planes started flying. Now, a lot of people, they all had tickets for the week before. So I went with 2 or 3 of my sons. I don't remember. 2 of my sons at least. So I remember we went to the airport. They had tickets, but their tickets were on Alitalia, and that plane didn't take off. Right. So we went to the airport, and there were 200 or 300 Lubavitcher Bachrim there. All looking. I mean, there were all sorts of other people, but the place was overrun with Lubavitcher Bachrim because they had one day. I think Rosh Hashanah was Monday night, so they had to get out to get to the Rebbe for Rosh Hashanah. Monday, Tuesday. It was very soon. They had to get to the 770. So all these Lubavitcher Bachrim were there with their tickets in their hands, but the tickets were useless, and they were trying to exchange them with the airlines for another ticket. So there was a beautiful scene that I have to talk about, just because it really was a beautiful scene. It was the old airport, and there was a room, maybe from that picture to that bookcase. That was the place where each airline had a little window, tiny little room. It was packed with people because there were so many people trying to change their tickets. And finally, one of the Bachrim got to the front. This took a while. Put his hand like this. Said, "Chevra, give me your tickets." He didn't take care of himself. He took care of himself and another 25 Bachrim. We didn't know who they were. Some of them he did, most of them he didn't. So 25 tickets go in his hand, and we just piled the tickets on him. And he put it down in front of the lady. She saw what happened. She said, "You're helping all them out?" I said, "You know them? Some of them." "I'm going to find a ticket for every single one of you. If you're like that, every one of you is getting on a plane." Right? He didn't worry about himself. He worried about 25 friends. He might have missed out. She might have said, "I only have 5," and given 5, and his wasn't one of them, because how did she know which was his and which one? 14 years old, 15 years old, but already knew what life was about. So she found them tickets for them. And my kids they were about 12 guys got on what Polish airlines. Fine. So my kids flew through Warsaw, which they had never done before. So they got off the plane in Warsaw, and they had to daven in Warsaw. And they had a minyan. So they davened in Warsaw. Now, this is a few days after 9/11. What was every airport full of? Army. I mean, army everywhere. Right? So the Polish army was standing guard, protecting 12 Lubavitcher Bachrim, davening Shachris in the Polish airport in whenever 1990, whatever it was, right? No, 2001, right? 2001, right? The Polish army was protecting the Jews daven. That's a slight change from the fairly recent past, right? And they even danced a particular song at the end of davening, dancing around, heralding the imminent coming of Mashiach as the Polish army was guarding them with their flags. Wow. That's a little different. So what's the Mesiras Nefesh of our generation? The Polish army is guarding us, davening in their airport, right? So we don't have to be Mesiras Nefesh. What's our Mesiras Nefesh? Not to be embarrassed by people who scorn us. Because we live in a world where the idea of belief in God is not necessarily a very popular idea. The people who consider themselves the enlightened people of the generation, and they have a lot of power and they make a lot of noise, those people scorn and ridicule people who believe in God. And that's a real challenge for the people who believe in God. And how do you overcome that? That's Mesiras Nefesh, the Rebbe says. And Moshe Rabbeinu is humbled by the fact that we will daven. And I'm not talking about in Poland, I'm talking about now when you're the only guy at the gate and you have to daven Shachris. You put on your we don't put on a talus yet. You put on your tefillin and you daven Shachris at the gate of a plane flying from Atlanta to who knows where. And you're not embarrassed, hopefully. And really, you shouldn't be embarrassed. Who should be embarrassed? The people who aren't praying to God should be embarrassed, not you. Especially those people, because all those people sitting with you at the gate, and now after 9/11, no one else is at the gate because only people who are flying on the plane can be at the gate. In the old days, you could go to the gate with your children or your parents and wish them, literally hug them as they got on the plane. Not anymore, right? If anybody ever complains about that, just remind them that's because of Arab terrorists. Next time you're waiting in line in security and the person behind you complains about the security that they have to go through, just remind them and say, yes, isn't it annoying what these Arab terrorists have caused to all of us? Because until they showed up, hijacking planes and blowing them up, there was no security. You just went to the gate with everybody you liked and waited at the gate together and then got on the plane. Right? Believe it or not, that's how it worked in the old days. Okay, so it doesn't work that way anymore. Why? Because there's creepy people out there. Creepy people make other people take precautions that they'd rather not take, right? You probably don't want to lock your car. It's a pain in the neck. But there's creeps out there who will steal it. If there weren't creeps who would steal it, you wouldn't lock it. But creeps make us do things that we'd rather not do. It's the way the world works. Okay, so there's also people who ridicule anybody who believes in God. And if you're davening, you have to daven mincha, you have to daven shachris at a gate of an airplane. Don't be embarrassed. The people should be embarrassed are the other 200 people getting on a plane. They're going to be flying on a metal tube 35,000 feet in the air going 500 miles an hour. Why aren't they davening? You just think that's just, that just happens, like it'll all work out. Why don't you ask God to help you? You're putting yourself in an unbelievably dangerous situation. It's simply, now I understand it's less dangerous than driving a car. Okay, when you drive a car, you also say a bracha. Tefillah is a derech, right? That's what you say when you get on a plane. Okay. You thank God, or you pray to God that everything should work out just fine, because it's up to Him. And if you don't, so then I should be embarrassed if I don't. Okay, but that's not the way the world works now. The world works as the people who actually are connected to truth are the ones who theoretically might feel embarrassed about that. And what's their Mesiras Nefesh? Not to be embarrassed by that in any way, shape, or form. Not to be embarrassed by being a Jew who has a strange stuff hanging out from his pants. Strange strings hanging out from his pants. Very bizarre, right? I mean, just go online and buy some new underwear. I mean, all this, it's like shredding. No, that's not what it is. I'm wearing a garment, right? Okay. Embarrassed? Why embarrassed? That's a beautiful thing. Right? And Moshe Rabbeinu is amazed at our generation. Wow. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. The Alter Rebbe is not talking about his generation. His generation had their own Mesiras Nefesh. The Tsar, the pogroms, the Cossacks, they had all there. The poverty was unbelievable, how poor they were, right? Our Mesiras Nefesh is not to be seduced by the riches all around, and to not be embarrassed by the people who might scorn Yiddishkeit and God in general, even though they have a very loud mouthpiece. These people, they make a lot of noise. Okay. Wish them a refuah shleima and get on with your life. So Moshe Rabbeinu looks at our generation, he's amazed. Right? The kiyum atar mitzvahs b'inyan shel yal yizbayish minam aligim. Don't be embarrassed by those who scorn. Uki yotze b'zeh. That's our Mesiras Nefesh. V'zeh mevi, and this the Rebbe says, last page. maybe l'kiyum ha'yehud, and this will bring the fulfillment of the statement v'yasvu anovim b'avaya simcha, an amazing line that Yeshayahu says is a beautiful, beautiful mimer of the Mittel Rebbe explaining this. The humble ones increase simcha. Interesting, Rebbe does talk about the fact you would think that simcha and humility don't go together. Humility seems to be a state of downtroddenness. No. Humility is a state of appreciating the godliness all around and appreciating that all the goodness that we have comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and so that person can be in a state of tremendous simcha, because when things don't go his way, also he realizes it's also HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's all the Eibishter. Simchas oilam al reisham, the ultimate joy is on their head, meaning they're incredibly simchas geula mitis v'shlema. What's that simcha? The simcha of the complete and true redemption. Haba miyuchad, that comes specifically how? What was the Baal Shem Tov told by Mashiach when the Baal Shem Tov went to visit the Heichal of Mashiach? He writes in his letter to his brother-in-law that on that Rosh Hashanah he experienced a tremendous elevation of his soul, and he ended up in the chamber of Mashiach, and he asked Mashiach, when is my master coming? And one of the things Mashiach told him is Afatzis Amayanis, when your wellspring spread out, when the Jewish world learns your Torah. Pnimis Torah, Chassidus. That's why this place we're in has the name it has. The spreading forth of the well springs, chutza, outside. Rabbi Shem Tov always gets very excited that when the Eibishter flooded the world in Parshas Noach, it's fairly recent history. It's a few weeks ago. So it says the way there was rain, but also all the mayones, all of the well springs of the world gushed water from below. So there was water from below, water from above, and the whole place was covered in a mikveh. 40 days, corresponding to the 40 sa'ah, the 40 liters approximately that a mikveh has to be. Okay, so then at the end, what? It says the Eibishter closed almost all of the mayonis, but kept certain mayonis open. Here, so the Rabbi Shem Tov says this is one of the mayonis that the Eibishter kept open. This mayon. Uba'efen shel nigalim miyad, and the fact that we will be redeemed immediately. Uba'efen the Poda besholom, and it should be a redemption in peace, right? Calmly, bli shum tircha, without any effort. Ad sheyakuyam hayeyud, until it will be fulfilled. The statement. Again, Yeshayahu Navi, because Yeshayahu talks about Yemei Mashiach more than any of the other prophets. Not the only one, but more than. This also happens to be a much longer book. Vayu Malachim Emnayach, the kings will be your arts, your craftsmen. V'sadar Seyim Menikei Sayach, and their ministers will be the ones who clean up. V'heviu es kol achechem. You bring all your brothers, mincha lavaya, an offering to Hashem, b'chli tahar, in a holy vessel, in holy vessels. B'kar of mamish, this should all happen very soon. B'mei golus achronim, in these last days of golus, v'achar kach, and then afterwards, umiyad, and immediately, ubishlemas, and in a complete way, b'fail, in actuality, b'gula mitis v'shlema, in the complete and true redemption, the true and complete redemption, al yedei Mashiach Tzidkenu, that will happen through the agency of Mashiach, b'im heder b'yameinu mamish, will happen speedily in our days. Poda besholom. Okay, two things here. I have two gifts. We're going to start. We have 3 classes before I disappear. Rabbi Silberg is going to take over this year when I'm gone for 10 days. Well, not 10 classes, but 5 or 6, 7. I'm gone for 2 Shabbos. This is a synopsis of the Maimon. So certainly the people who learn the Maimon should take. If there's extras, so the people who are just here today should take. But and this is certainly only for the people who learn the Maimon. These are some basic questions on the Maimon that I would like you to write clear and legible answers to, and then when I come back, you'll give it to me. You want to do it today and give it to me tomorrow, you can do that also. But these are basic questions. There are no tricks. The answer isn't to get you to make sure they get the wrong answer by giving difficult questions that are right, okay? We have 5 minutes, we can go over the questions right now, all right? What are the 3 basic time periods spoken of at the beginning of the Maimer relative to Poda besholom? So we can certainly remember that. Anybody know the answer right now? 3 time periods relative to Poda besholom at the beginning of the Maimer. Beautiful, God bless you. Right? Shlomo Melech, first kuf of Mashiach, second kuf of Mashiach. That's the first answer. Why is the tefillah referred to as a bir of derech shel milchama? We talked about that today. Even Rabbi Levinger's students can answer that one because we talked about it today. Right? What is the difference between the learning of Nikla and the learning of Pneumius Torah? The Rebbe talks at great length, the difference between learning Gemara and learning Chassidus, right? Okay, so that's right in the middle of the Maimer, so you should be able to find that and see that. How can Tefillah be the ultimate expression of Poda besholom? Well, that's what we learned today. We reviewed what we saw on Thursday, and then we talked about it again today. How can davening be Poda besholom? Davening is Poda b'milchama, isn't it? Shas krova. The time of davening is a time of war, right? And what we just learned right now, what is the particular expression of Mesiras Nefesh of our generation mentioned by the Rebbe in the Maimer? So that I can ask you. I can ask you the answer for 1 and 5. What's that? Rebbe just taught us right now.
Not to be embarrassed.
Not to be embarrassed by the scorners. That's the Mesiras Nefesh of our generation. Amazing. Baruch Hashem, no one's trying to kill us. I mean, there are people trying to kill us. I get that, but there isn't. There are even now in Syria, right? The few Jews that weren't allowed to serve God in any way, shape, or form that was Jewish, the few of those who were actually still, that reality still existed. There was a decree by the government, lived in Syria. There are still Jews in Syria. Iran, as bad as Iran is, there's shuls in Iran, Shabbos, kosher food. What's the Iranians' problem? Not with Yiddishkeit. They say they don't like Jews, right? But what do they say? What's their problem? What are you not allowed to do in Iran? What can't Jews do? Right. Any sign of Zionism is completely and totally forbidden. Okay. Say, I mean, Peseder, not Peseder, right? Whatever. But Shabbos, Kashrus, Tefillin, Shachris in the morning, no problem. There's minyanim all over Iran. Crazy. Okay, so there's basically I think the situation in Syria is different right now. I think there's been certain, under Assad it was a disaster, but I think right now things are, not because the guy who's in charge likes us, but probably because Assad made it forbidden. He probably made it the opposite, just because he's going to do the opposite of whatever Assad did. But I'm not sure what the story is with the Jews in Syria now, but those were the only Jews in the world who were living under a regime that wouldn't allow them to express their Jewishness in any way, shape, or form. There's nowhere else. If you listen to the media in the Western world, they are sending a message that might forbid it, because if you want to be an enlightened person, you wouldn't possibly act that way. Oh, that's a different message. That's what the Rebbe's talking about. That's the not to be embarrassed by the scorners. But Baruch Hashem, no. Yes, there are people who want to hurt us, and that's why there are soldiers in front of every shul in Europe and now England, and I don't know, in North America, are there police around?
We have police at the bigger ones, and we have a guard at our.
Yeah, I mean, 770 has police out front all the time, right? They uncovered a plot way back in the days of the man, there was a guy named Rat. His last name rhymed with the word rat, and he lived in Ramallah. So he was the first famous terrorist, and he became a statesman, so to speak. He was given the Nobel Peace Prize. They uncovered a plot to kill the Rebbe. They wanted to get into 770, do something. So police were stationed out front of 770, and they're still there. They're still there. Okay. because it's an obvious place that they would want to get. But Baruch Hashem, haven't and won't. But so that's out there. Usually quieter over there. It's out there, but we're there's no one telling you can't have chakras, except the nightly news. And maybe your Yetzer Hara. Okay, that's always there. Right? And what's the battle in our generation? It's such an amazing, and the Rebbe says this over and over. Not to be embarrassed. What you're doing is true and good and healthy and amazing. And don't be embarrassed about it. Don't be embarrassed if when you know, one of the things you're going to have to exhibit when you go back to wherever you came from is to not be embarrassed by your friends. Some of your friends might not be overly excited about what you're doing. Specifically, unfortunately, which of your friends are going to be most annoyed at your newfound bizarre behavior?
Jews?
The Jewish ones. The Goyish ones? Wow, cool. Yeah, wow, that's really cool. What do you do? Oh, yeah? Oh, that's cool. The Jewish ones? Why? They're going to be threatened by it, which is reasonable. I mean, I get it, okay, but you can allay their fears, and you can do whatever you want. Right? Just leave me alone. Let me do my thing and stop judging me. Right? Okay. But the Jewish ones will be threatened by it. The non-Jewish ones? Very often today, people come from families where there's a Jewish parent and a non-Jewish parent. So, without any conversion, that means the mother's Jewish and the father isn't. And a lot of people have left this yeshiva and had more trouble with their Jewish mother than with their non-Jewish father when they go home. Non-Jewish father's chilled out. All right, do whatever you want. All right, fine. It's his father, that's not, all right, but okay, fine, good for you. The Jewish mother's a little nervous. Now she might think that he doesn't approve of her now. Blah, blah. Okay, we get it. We can get all the psychology of it, but I mean, say that. But that's a difficult situation for someone to be in. Okay, fine. That's their situation. That's where God put them, and obviously they have the ability to deal with that in a positive way, and in a loving way, and in a caring way, and they will, and everything will work out. Al Yizbarish Mina Maligin. That's the Mesiras Nefesh of this generation. Right? It's the story. I think we told the story the other day, but I'll tell it again. I won't explain why. Right? A Shaliach who was in the White House with Jimmy Carter. Remember the story? Fifth night of Hanukkah. Right? Lit the menorah in the White. There were two menorahs. There was a menorah with big lamps. Big huge menorah with electric bulbs. So there were 5 of those. And then they lit a menorah with oil in the Oval Office. Jimmy Carter, it was the 5th night. So Jimmy Carter said, why don't you light all 8? So it's the 5th night. Yeah, but more light the better. I want to spread light. Let there be more light. So he lit all 8. And he wrote a doc to the Rebbe afterwards. He wrote the Rebbe a report as to what happened when he was in the White House. And he told the Rebbe that too. The Rebbe wrote him back and said, I'm disappointed that you didn't have enough Jewish pride to tell the President of the United States that tonight we light 5, not 8. The Rebbe said, I'm disappointed in you. You should have just told the President of the United States tonight and be proud of it. The Rebbe used the words Ga'on Yaakov, the pride of Yaakov. Right? We light 5, we don't light 8. You want to light 8, you can light 8. And they go in the, what is there? Somebody, you want to light another one? Light another one. You can light 8. We light 5. That's what we do. He didn't say that. Do you and I understand the pressure he might have felt? That's okay, fine, good, okay. But who is he? Where is he? Who's he representing? He's not representing himself. He's representing Lubavitch in general. He's representing the Rebbe. He's representing the Eibishter. He is God's messenger in that room right now. What does God say it is? It's the 5th night of Hanukkah. What do? You light 5. That's what you do. Do you light 8? No. So you don't light 8. That's Mesiras Nefesh. Oh, that's exactly the Mesiras Nefesh of our generation. No one told him not to light it. He didn't have to light it in secret. Why is it that the minhag in America is, in Europe, but America specifically, and probably if you lit Chanukiot in your growing up, you probably lit where did you light your Chanukiot? Probably on the kitchen table or something, or maybe in the window, but probably not. Right? What's the basic halacha? We're coming close to Hanukkah. What's today? Today's the 25th. 1 month today is Hanukkah, 30 days before the Yom Tov. You're supposed to talk about the halachas. What's the basic halacha? What?
To publicize the miracle.
And where do you put it? Outside your front door, next to the opposite from the mezuzah. Okay, now in Lubavitch we light inside. That's really interesting because we're the people who are always going outside and everybody else goes outside and we go inside on Hanukkah. Not because we like to do everything the opposite. There's a reason, the Rebbe gives the reason, it's not for now.
We make up for it by going on the
We go on the true, 100%, but we light on the inside. The Rebbe said in order to illuminate the outside, you have to make sure your inside is illuminated first. Okay, fine. But that's really interesting that we do that relative to Hanukkah. So anyway, but where's it supposed to be on the outside? What's the heter to put it on the inside? Well, if someone's going to throw a rock at it or put it out, or so then you're allowed to put it on the inside. So most Ashkenazim, without knowing, just, the regular Ashkenazi Jew in North America who's affiliated to Judaism, so therefore there's a couple of holidays that they keep very, very, Baruch Hashem, very, very carefully. And what's that? They go to Shul Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, they light a Chanukiah on Pesach, on Hanukkah, and they have a Seder on Pesach. Probably one. Probably don't have a second Seder, but they have a first one. Right? Okay, beautiful, amazing. Right? Where do they put that Chanukiah? On the table, on the table in the kitchen. Why? Well, because it used to be. You couldn't put it outside because someone will throw a rock at your house and break it. Okay, so Baruch Hashem, that's not the case anymore. Here in Eretz Yisrael, you guys will walk around Hanukkah, you'll be absolutely astounded. Chanukiot everywhere. They'll be outside, apartment buildings, there'll be 5 stacked up outside on the street, outside every apartment building, because everybody lit up there. It's beautiful. The whole street is lit up by Chanukiot. No one's stopping us. Today you can put it outside. There are places where you can't. Our son-in-law grew up in Gateshead, England, which is Newcastle. Pretty much, the white trash of England lives there. I mean, these guys are really, low below. They're called Geordies. I mean, these guys are really, they're like...
I went to university very close, so I'd see them on the train.
Where, Sunderland? Where'd you go?
Durham.
Okay.
So you'd see the Hasidic ones on the train.
Geordies. I mean, you can't even understand when they talk. I mean, they're really unbelievable. I mean, they're really... So we asked, any anti-Semitism? Oh, yeah, sure. They'd get drunk and they'd start screaming. But generally, there was a whole Jewish area called Gateshead, but our son-in-law remembers that their sukkah, they built a sukkah in the backyard, but their fence was about 10 feet tall. They had like a brick wall, 10 feet tall. Why? Well, and they had a lane in the back, right? There used to be things called lanes in between the houses. And the drunk Geordies would come down the lane, they'd see the sukkah, and this had happened, so this is why people started doing this. They would set fire to the top of the sukkah. Now, that's hard to do in Newcastle because it's probably raining, but I mean, if they could, they would set fire to it. So they had to put a wall so they couldn't see it. When you're walking down the lane, you couldn't see it. So that's not that long ago. Okay. Is that still a problem? I don't know. Depends how well Newcastle United is doing, probably. If they're doing well, they're happy. If they're losing, they're not so happy. That's a separate issue. As long as Sunderland's doing worse, then I think they're still happy, even if they're not so good. Yeah.
You don't think this is changing post October 7th?
What, getting worse or getting better?
Getting worse.
It depends who. I don't think the Geordie is more anti-Semitic after, right? He didn't crawl out. His anti-Semitism was probably pretty obvious all the time, and when he got drunk, he would say things about Jews. It's the so-called enlightened elite whose anti-Semitism has come out from under the rock. Your average... Yeah, I don't know. It might be 60 years ago, your average guy in Alabama hated Jews. I don't think he does anymore. He really doesn't. I mean, he couldn't care less. right? And if anybody, he's on our side.
Be like a small.
But yeah, it's the so-called educated elite in Harvard, Yale, and University of Chicago and Berkeley who are the serious anti-Semites. And that's pretty depressing if you believe in education, at least their type. I think the last place any normal Jewish parent should send his child is to an American university today. I don't understand why anybody's still doing that, especially Harvard, Yale. Why would anybody do that? Okay, I guess they figure that they have to be Meiser Nefesh for the piece of paper that they really think is important and are willing to sacrifice their children, or at least put their children in that. Not the chassidus, they don't love their children. Of course, they love their children, but they think that that's so important. It's worth the sacrifice necessary. What are you doing? Just boycott them. Now, they also, now that we've uncovered it all, they've also been just as nasty and had all sorts of